Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. The sun hung high in the sky over King's Landing, casting a warm glow on the bustling city below. Jon Snow stood in the grand hall of the Red Keep, his heart pounding in his chest as he awaited his trial. The echoes of the previous day's chaos in the marketplace still resonated in his mind. Shouts of defiance, the clash of swords, and the faces of the townsfolk who had stood beside him. Now, however, he was alone, facing the judgment of those who held power in the realm. Lord Ned Stark stood beside him, his expression grave but supportive. Eddard's presence offered Jon a flicker of comfort, but the weight of the situation pressed heavily on his shoulders. He had never imagined he would find himself in such a position, standing before King Robert Baratheon and the small council, accused of inciting a riot against the Goldcloaks. As the doors to the hall swung open, Jon felt a chill run down his spine. He stepped forward, his heart racing as he entered the chamber filled with lords and ladies, their eyes fixed on him. At the end of the long table, King Robert sat, his imposing figure surrounded by advisors, including Petyr Baelish, who observed the proceedings with a calculating gaze. "Bring forth the accused," Robert commanded, his voice booming through the hall. Jon swallowed hard, stepping into the light. The king's presence was overwhelming. He was a man of great stature, with a wild mane of dark hair and a boisterous laugh that could fill a room. But there was a recklessness in his demeanor that made Jon uneasy. "Jon Snow, bastard of Ned Stark," Robert began, his tone shifting to one of mockery. "You've stirred up quite a ruckus in my city, haven't you? A riot, of all things. What do you have to say for yourself?" Jon's throat felt dry, but he forced himself to speak. "Your Grace, I only sought to defend the people from the Goldcloaks. They were being bullied, and I couldn't stand by and watch." Robert leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "Defending the common folk, are we? A noble cause indeed. But do you understand the consequences of your actions? You've defied the authority of the crown, boy." Eddard stepped forward, his voice steady and firm. "Your Grace, if I may." Jon was acting in defense of those who had no voice. The Goldcloaks were the aggressors in this situation. "Ah, Eddard," Robert interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. "You always were too soft-hearted. But let's not forget who we're dealing with. Jon Snow, the Stark bastard. How do we know he didn't incite this chaos on purpose?" Jon's heart sank at the king's words. He felt the weight of his lineage pressing down on him, the stigma of being a bastard overshadowing any good intentions he had. He glanced at Baelish, who sat quietly, his expression inscrutable. Jon sensed that the cunning lord was calculating his next move. "Your Grace," Baelish finally spoke, his voice smooth and persuasive. "I believe it would be prudent to investigate the matter further. The Goldcloaks have a reputation for heavy-handedness. Perhaps they share some of the blame for this incident." Robert raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And what do you propose, Lord Baelish?" "A fair trial, Your Grace," Baelish suggested, his tone almost disingenuous. "We should gather testimonies from the townsfolk and the Goldcloaks involved. If Jon acted out of line, then let him face the consequences. But if the guards were at fault, then they must also be held accountable." Jon felt a flicker of hope at Baelish's words, though he remained wary of the man's intentions. He knew that Baelish was skilled at playing both sides, and he wondered if this was merely a way to gain favor with Eddard. "Very well," Robert replied, scratching his beard thoughtfully. "We'll conduct an investigation, but make no mistake, Jon Snow, if you're found guilty, you'll face the king's justice." Jon nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty. He could only hope that the truth would prevail. As the trial progressed, Jon listened intently as witnesses were called to testify. The first to speak was a merchant from the marketplace, a stout man with a nervous demeanor. "I saw it all, Your Grace," he began, wringing his hands. "The Goldcloaks were pushing people around, demanding money for nothing. Jon Snow stood up to them, trying to protect us." The king leaned forward, his interest piqued. "And what did the Goldcloaks do?" "They drew their swords, Your Grace," the merchant replied, his voice trembling. "They threatened to arrest him. It was chaos." Jon felt a wave of relief wash over him. At least someone was speaking the truth. But as the testimonies continued, he noticed the unease in the room. The Goldcloaks were not without their defenders, and their reputation as the king's enforcers loomed large. Next, a Goldcloak stepped forward, his armor gleaming in the sunlight. "This boy is a troublemaker," he sneered, pointing a finger at Jon. He incited the crowd to rise against us. We were only doing our duty. Jon clenched his fists, anger surging within him. You were bullying the people. You were the ones who started the fight. The king raised a hand to silence him, his expression a mix of amusement and irritation. You'll have your chance to speak, Jon. Let the witnesses finish. As the trial continued, Jon felt the tension mounting. The testimonies were conflicting, and he could see the council members exchanging glances, weighing their options. Baelish remained silent, his expression unreadable, but Jon could sense the man's influence lurking in the background. After what felt like an eternity, the trial reached its conclusion. Robert looked around the room, his expression thoughtful. I've heard enough. It seems there's blame to be shared on both sides. Jon Snow acted with a measure of bravery, but he also incited chaos in my city. Jon's heart sank as he listened to the king's words. He had hoped for a fair outcome, but it seemed that the king's judgment was clouded by his own biases. Your Grace, Jon began, desperation creeping into his voice. I only wanted to protect the people. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Robert waved a hand dismissively. Your intentions matter little in the eyes of the law, boy. However, I believe that the gold cloaks must also be held accountable for their actions. They cannot act with impunity. Jon's heart raced as he listened to the king's words. What will happen to them, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I'll have a word with Captain Slint, Robert replied, his tone serious. There will be consequences for their actions, but I won't see a boy punished too harshly for trying to do what he thought was right. Jon nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. He understood that justice in King's Landing was a fragile thing, easily swayed by politics and power. He glanced at Eddard, who watched the proceedings with a keen eye, his expression unreadable. After the trial concluded, Jon found himself seated at the king's feast that evening. The grand hall was filled with laughter and revelry, the sounds of clinking goblets and boisterous conversations echoing off the stone walls. It was a stark contrast to the tension of the trial earlier in the day. Jon sat beside Eddard, who watched the festivities with a wary eye. Are you all right? Eddard asked quietly, concern etched on his face. I'm fine, Jon replied, though he could feel the knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. I don't want to be a burden to you, father. You're not a burden, Jon, Eddard reassured him. You acted with honor. It's the gold cloaks who should be held accountable. Jon nodded, grateful for his father's support, but his thoughts drifted to the king. Robert was seated at the head of the table, his laughter booming as he recounted tales of his exploits. Jon watched as Robert drank heavily, his charisma evident even in his drunken state. Ah, Jon, Robert called out, spotting him across the table. Come here, boy, join us! Jon hesitated, but eventually stood, making his way to the king's side. Robert clapped him on the shoulder, his grip surprisingly strong. You've got spirit, I'll give you that. A Stark bastard standing up to the gold cloaks. You remind me of my youth. Jon felt a mix of admiration and apprehension. Your Grace, I was only trying to do what was right. Right? Ha. In this world, it's all about power and who holds the sword, Robert replied, his voice slurred but filled with conviction. You should learn that, boy. It's a lesson I learned the hard way. As the night wore on, Robert's demeanor shifted. He grew contemplative, his thoughts drifting to the past. You know, I often think of Rhaegar and Lyanna, he mused, his eyes distant. Those were different times. I loved her, Jon. She was a beauty, and she had a fire in her spirit like yours. Jon felt something stir within him at the mention of Lyanna's name. He had heard whispers of her beauty and grace, but it was the first time he felt a connection to her. What was she like? Jon asked, curiosity piqued. Robert sighed heavily, his expression melancholic. She was everything I was not. Brave, fierce, and unyielding. I loved her, but I lost her to Rhaegar, and now I wonder what could have been. Jon's heart raced as he listened to the king's words. He felt a strange sense of longing, a connection to a past he had never known. The stories of Rhaegar and Lyanna were shrouded in mystery, but hearing Robert speak of them stirred something deep within him. Do you ever think about what happened? Jon asked cautiously. About the choices that were made? Robert's gaze turned sharp, his drunken haze momentarily clearing. Every day, Jon, every day. But what's done is done. We can't change the past. We can only look to the future. Jon nodded, feeling the weight of those words. The past was a shadow that loomed over him, and he wondered how much of it shaped who he was becoming. He glanced at Eddard, who was watching the exchange with a keen eye, and felt a rush of gratitude for his father's presence. As the feast continued, Jon found himself lost in thought, contemplating the stories of love and loss that echoed in the hall. He was a Stark, a bastard, a young man caught in the web of history and politics. But one thing was clear: he would not let fear dictate his actions. He would fight for what was right, even if it meant standing against the tide. As the night wore on, Robert's drunken musings continued, and Jon felt the atmosphere shift. The king's laughter became less frequent, replaced by moments of introspection. "You know, Jon," Robert said, his voice low, "if I had made different choices, perhaps things would have turned out differently for all of us. Rhaegar was a good man, and Lyanna, she was the light of my life." Jon listened intently, the weight of Robert's words resonating within him. He felt a strange connection to this man, a king who had once been a friend to his father, and had known love and loss in ways Jon could only begin to understand. "What happened to her, Your Grace?" Jon asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. Robert's expression darkened, and he leaned closer, lowering his voice. "She was taken from me, Jon. Stolen away by Rhaegar, and when I finally found her, it was too late. They say she died giving birth to a child that was never meant to be." Jon's breath caught in his throat. The implications of Robert's words hung heavy in the air. He felt a connection to this lost child, a sense of longing for a family that had been ripped apart by the tides of war and ambition. "What was the child's name?" Jon asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Robert hesitated, his eyes clouded with emotion. "They called him Aegon," he said, his voice thick with sorrow. "But it doesn't matter now. What matters is that we move forward, that we don't let the past consume us." Jon nodded, feeling the weight of the conversation. He realized that the past was a double-edged sword, capable of both illuminating the present and casting dark shadows over the future. He was determined to honor the memory of those who had come before him, to forge his own path in a world filled with uncertainty. As the feast continued, Jon felt a sense of camaraderie building around him. The laughter and revelry enveloped him, and he found solace in the warmth of the gathering. He was not just a bastard, he was a Stark, a part of something greater than himself. Eventually, the night drew to a close, and the guests began to disperse. Robert, now thoroughly intoxicated, leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Eddard exchanged a glance with Jon, his expression a mixture of concern and understanding. "Let's get the king to his chambers," Eddard said quietly, rising from his seat. Jon nodded, moving to assist his father as they approached Robert. "Come on, Your Grace," Eddard said gently, placing a hand on Robert's shoulder. "It's time for you to rest." Robert opened one eye, a lazy grin spreading across his face. "Aw, Eddard, you're always looking out for me. A good friend, you are." Jon felt a swell of pride at his father's unwavering loyalty. Eddard had always been a man of honor, and he hoped to emulate that in his own life. Together they helped Robert rise from the table, the king leaning heavily on Eddard for support. As they made their way through the dimly lit corridors of the Red Keep, Jon couldn't shake the feeling that the night had changed something within him. He had faced the judgment of the king, stood up for the townsfolk, and learned about the complexities of love and loss from Robert's own experiences. When they finally reached the king's chambers, Robert stumbled slightly, and Jon quickly moved to catch him. "Careful, Your Grace," he said, a hint of concern in his voice. Robert chuckled, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "You're a good lad, Jon Snow. Keep that spirit. There's a fire in you that reminds me of Rhaegar. Use it wisely." Jon felt a shiver run down his spine at the mention of Rhaegar's name. He didn't fully understand the connection, but he sensed that there was more to his lineage than he had been told. "Thank you, Your Grace," Jon replied, his voice steady. "I will." As they settled Robert into bed, Eddard turned to Jon, his expression serious. "You did well today, Jon. Remember that you are not defined by your past, but by your choices." Jon nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "I understand, Father. I will do my best to honor our family." Eddard smiled, placing a hand on Jon's shoulder. "I know you will. Now let's leave the king to his dreams." As they stepped out of the chamber, Jon felt a sense of determination wash over him. He was a Stark, a fighter, and he would not let the shadows of the past dictate his future. The world was a complex place, filled with challenges and uncertainties, but he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they made their way back through the halls of the Red Keep, Jon couldn't shake the feeling that the night had changed him in ways he could not yet comprehend. He was determined to forge his own path, to honor the legacy of those who had come before him, and to protect those who could not protect themselves. As the stars twinkled above the city, he felt a flicker of hope igniting within him, a hope for a future where he could be more than just a bastard, but a man of honor and purpose. In a dimly lit chamber away from prying eyes, Petyr Baelish leaned against the stone wall, his expression a blend of amusement and seriousness as he regarded Eddard Stark. "You know, Eddard," he began, his voice low and conspiratorial. "You owe me a favor now." Convincing the king to temper his judgment was no small feat, especially with the Lannisters lurking in the shadows, eager to exploit any weakness they could find in your family. I had to navigate a delicate web of alliances and threats, all while keeping my own hands clean. It was a dance, really. One wrong step, and Jon could have found himself facing the gallows instead of a mere reprimand. You might consider this a warning, my friend. In this Game of Thrones, the stakes are higher than you realize, and the Lannisters will not forget your son's defiance so easily. Eddard's brow furrowed at the implications, understanding the precarious balance of power that Baelish had managed to maintain. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was now entangled in a web of debts and favors that could come back to haunt him. Thoros of Myr stood quietly in the shadows of the Red Keep, his keen eyes observing the unfolding drama with a mixture of intrigue and concern. He had always been a man of the flame, a priest of Reborn, but in this court filled with ambition and treachery, he felt the heat of conflict simmering beneath the surface. Jon Snow's defiance against the Gold Cloaks echoed in his mind. It was a flicker of righteousness in a city often shrouded in darkness. Yet Thoros knew that such courage came with a price. He had sensed the undercurrents of tension involving the Lannisters. They're plotting a dangerous game that could easily turn lethal for Jon and his Stark kin. As he considered Petyr Baelish's manipulations, Thoros felt the weight of fate pressing down on him. The flames of prophecy whispered in his ear, urging him to keep a close watch on the young bastard's path. In a world where loyalty was fleeting and honor often sacrificed, Thoros understood that Jon's survival might depend on the very alliances he was unaware of, and the choices made in the shadows could either forge a new destiny or seal his doom. The streets of King's Landing buzzed with life, the air thick with the scent of roasted meats and the sounds of laughter spilling from taverns. Jon Snow found himself wandering through the bustling marketplace, his thoughts still lingering on the trial and the weight of his newfound responsibilities. He had spent the past few days trying to shake off the tension that had enveloped him, seeking solace in the familiar chaos of the city. It was in a small tavern where he first met her. Ygritte, a spirited girl with a quick wit that captivated him from the moment they exchanged glances. She was unlike anyone Jon had ever encountered, her laughter infectious and her stories filled with a sense of adventure that made him feel alive. They had spent hours together, sharing tales of their lives, her laughter mingling with the clinking of mugs and the raucous songs sung by the patrons. "Tell me more about the North," Ygritte urged, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Is it true that you men live in a castle made of ice?" Jon chuckled, recounting tales of the wall and the cold winds that howled through the Winterfell. "It's not as exaggerated as it is spread," he admitted, a smile tugging at his lips. Ygritte leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I think you're brave, Jon Snow. You stand up for what you believe in, even when the odds are against you." Her words resonated with him, igniting a flicker of confidence he had struggled to hold on to since the trial. In those moments spent with Ygritte, he felt a sense of freedom, as if the burdens of his lineage and the expectations of his family faded away. They would sneak out to the stables, sharing stolen stories under the stars, the world outside forgotten as they lost themselves in each other. But as the days passed, Jon felt the weight of destiny creeping back into his life. It was during one of these evenings, after a particularly spirited discussion about the nature of honor and duty, that he encountered Thoros. Thoros was a man of contradictions, a priest of R'hllor who embraced the warmth of the flame, yet roamed the shadows of King's Landing. Jon found him in a quiet corner of the tavern, the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows across his face. The priest seemed lost in thought, his brow furrowed as if wrestling with some unseen burden. "Jon," Thoros called softly, beckoning him to join him. "I've had another vision." Jon's heart quickened at the mention of visions. He had heard whispers of Thoros's prophetic dreams, tales of fire and destiny that left him both intrigued and apprehensive. "What did you see?" Jon asked, taking a seat across from the priest. "The wolf and the dragon, bound by fire," Thoros replied, his voice low and serious. "It was a vivid image, Jon. I saw flames engulfing the sky, and in the midst of it all, a wolf and a dragon stood together, united against a great darkness." Jon's mind raced at the implications of Thoros's words. The wolf represented his Stark heritage, while the dragon evoked images of Targaryens. "What does it mean?" he asked, a knot forming in his stomach. "I'm still trying to decipher it," Thoros admitted, his gaze distant. "But I believe it speaks to a destiny that intertwines your fate with that of the dragon. There is something significant about this, something that could change the course of history." Jon felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. He had heard tales of dragons and their power, but the notion of being tied to such a legacy was daunting. "Destiny can be a heavy burden," he said quietly. Thoros nodded, his expression solemn. "Indeed, but it is also a path filled with purpose. I want to teach you some of the magic I know, Jon. It may take time and some of it may be beyond my abilities, but I believe you have the potential to learn." "Magic?" Jon echoed, skepticism creeping into his voice. "Isn't that just stories told by firelight?" "No, Jon," Thoros replied, leaning forward. "Magic is real, and it exists in the world around us. It flows through the flames, through the bonds we share with one another. If you are willing, I can guide you in understanding it. It will not be easy, but I believe you have the strength to embrace it." Jon considered Thoros' words, the weight of the decision settling heavily on his shoulders. He had always felt a connection to the world around him, a sense of something greater lurking beneath the surface. Perhaps this was the opportunity he needed to forge his own path and uncover the truth behind the visions that haunted Thoros. "I'll do it," Jon said finally, determination filling his voice. "I want to learn." Thoros smiled, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. "Very well then. We will begin with the basics. Understanding the flames is essential, for they hold the key to many mysteries." As the days turned into weeks, Jon found himself immersed in the teachings of Thoros. They would meet in secret, away from the prying eyes of the court, where they could explore the depths of magic and prophecy. Thoros taught him to listen to the whispers of the fire, to feel its warmth and understand its language. "Fire is a living thing," Thoros explained one evening, the flickering flames casting shadows on the walls. "It can create and destroy, heal and harm. You must learn to respect it, for it is a reflection of your own spirit." Jon practiced diligently, his heart racing with excitement and trepidation as he attempted to harness the energy of the flames. At first it was challenging. He struggled to focus, the flickering light dancing before his eyes as he tried to connect with its essence. But with each passing lesson, he felt a growing sense of understanding. One night, as they sat together in the dim light, Thoros shared a story from his past. "When I was younger, I was lost," he admitted, his voice heavy with memory. "I sought power and glory, but I found only emptiness. It was in the flames that I discovered my true purpose. They showed me the way, and it is my duty to guide others now." Jon listened intently, captivated by the priest's journey. "What if I fail?" he asked, vulnerability creeping into his voice. "Failure is a part of the journey, Jon," Thoros replied, his gaze steady. "It is through our failures that we learn and grow. Embrace the challenges, and do not shy away from the flames. They will reveal the truth to you." With each lesson, Jon felt a bond forming between him and Thoros, a connection forged in the fires of destiny. He began to see the world differently, the flames no longer mere sources of light and warmth, but vessels of knowledge and power. He realized that his journey was just beginning, and the path ahead was filled with uncertainty. In the evenings after their lessons, Jon would return to the tavern to meet Ygritte. Their time together became a refuge from the weight of his training and the prophecies that loomed over him. Ygritte's laughter filled the air, and her spirit ignited a spark within him that reminded him of the life he wanted to lead. One night, as they strolled through the moonlit streets, Ygritte looked up at him, her eyes shining with mischief. "You seem different, Jon. There's a fire in you that wasn't there before." Jon smiled, feeling the warmth of her words. "I've been learning some things," he admitted, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and uncertainty. "Things about destiny and magic." "Magic?" Ygritte raised an eyebrow, a playful grin on her lips. "Are you saying you can conjure flames and make them dance?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "Not quite yet, but I'm trying. It's a journey, and I have a long way to go." As their laughter echoed through the streets, Jon felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was not just a bastard, he was a young man on the brink of discovering his true self. With Ygritte by his side and Thoros guiding him through the mysteries of magic, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But deep down, he knew that the flames of prophecy were not just a metaphor. They were a warning, a call to action that would shape his fate and the fate of those he cared for. As he looked up at the stars twinkling above, he felt a sense of determination burning within him. He would embrace his destiny and fight for the future he believed in, no matter the cost. Days turned into weeks, and Jon's training with Thoros deepened. They would gather in secluded corners of the city, where the flickering light of candles provided a sanctuary for their lessons. Thoros taught him to meditate, to quiet his mind and listen to the whispers of the flames. The priest spoke of the connection between fire and the soul, how it reflected one's innermost desires and fears. "Close your eyes, Jon," Thoros instructed one evening, the candlelight casting a warm glow on their faces. "Feel the heat of the flames, let it guide you." Jon obeyed, shutting his eyes and focusing on the crackling fire before him. At first his thoughts raced, memories of Winterfell, the weight of his lineage, the visions that haunted Thoros. But as he breathed deeply, he felt the warmth envelop him, wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. The flames danced behind his eyelids, and he could almost hear them speaking, urging him to let go of his doubts. "Now envision your own flame," Thoros encouraged. "What does it look like? What color is it?" Jon concentrated, picturing a flame that flickered with shades of blue and gold, a representation of his spirit. "It's bright," he whispered, feeling a sense of calm wash over him, like a beacon in the darkness. "Good," Thoros said, a hint of pride in his voice. "That flame is your essence, Jon. Nurture it, and it will guide you through the trials ahead." With this newfound power came a sense of responsibility. Jon understood that the flames were not to be taken lightly. They held the potential for both creation and destruction. He recalled Thoros' warning about failure and the importance of respecting the fire's nature. One evening, as they practiced, Thoros paused, his expression turning serious. "Jon, remember that magic is not just about power. It is also about understanding the consequences of your actions. The flames can illuminate the path, but they can also consume everything in their wake." Jon nodded, absorbing the weight of Thoros' words. "I will be careful," he promised, feeling the gravity of the journey ahead. "I want to use this knowledge to protect those I care about." "Then you are on the right path," Thoros replied, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "But be prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. The flames of prophecy burn brightly, and they will test your resolve." As the stars of night twinkled above, Jon made a silent vow to himself. He would honor the legacy of his family, protect those he loved, and forge his own path in a world filled with uncertainty. The flames of prophecy burned brightly in his heart, and he was determined to follow their light, no matter where it led him. The days turned into weeks, and Jon and Ygritte embarked on a series of adventures throughout King's Landing. They visited bustling markets, where Ygritte would barter for trinkets, and Jon would watch in awe as she charmed the merchants with her quick wit. They wandered through the gardens of the Red Keep, where Ygritte would gather wildflowers, weaving them into crowns that she playfully placed on Jon's head, declaring him king of the flowers. One afternoon, they found themselves at the edge of the city, overlooking the harbor. The sun glinted off the water, and Ygritte's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Let's go down to the docks," she exclaimed, grabbing Jon's hand and pulling him toward the bustling wharves. At the docks, they encountered sailors from distant lands, their tales of adventure and peril captivating Ygritte. Jon listened intently as they spoke of storms at sea and battles fought against pirates, feeling a sense of longing for the adventures that lay beyond the wall. Ygritte, ever the dreamer, spun tales of her own, claiming that they would one day sail the seas together, exploring lands unknown. "Imagine it, Jon," she said, her eyes alight with enthusiasm. "We could find treasures, discover new kingdoms, and write our own stories." Jon smiled at her infectious spirit, but a part of him felt tethered by duty. "I have responsibilities," he reminded her gently. "I can't simply abandon them." Ygritte's expression softened, and she squeezed his hand. "I know, but you can still dream, Jon. Dreams can lead to paths we never imagined." Her words lingered in his mind, and he found himself dreaming of a future where he could balance his duties with the adventures that Ygritte inspired in him. They spent hours at the docks, listening to the sailors' tales and sharing their own, creating a bond that felt unbreakable. As their adventures continued, Jon began to notice the shadows lurking in the corners of King's Landing. Whispers of the Lannisters and their plots reached his ears, and he couldn't shake the feeling that their actions were intertwined with his own fate. He confided in Ygritte about his concerns, and she listened intently, her brow furrowed in thought. "Do you think they're after you?" she asked, worry creeping into her voice. "I don't know," Jon admitted, feeling the weight of uncertainty, "but I can't ignore the signs. Thoros has warned me about the flames of prophecy, and I can't shake the feeling that they are part of something larger." Jon felt a sense of strength in her presence. He knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but with Ygritte by his side, he felt ready to confront whatever lay in wait. One evening, as they sat atop a hill overlooking the city, Jon shared his thoughts with Ygritte. "I've been training with Thoros," he said, his voice contemplative. "He believes I have a destiny tied to magic and fire." Ygritte's eyes widened with curiosity. "Magic? What kind of magic?" "He teaches me about the flames, how they reflect our spirits and desires," Jon explained. "But it's not just about power, it's about understanding the consequences of our actions." He smiled, feeling a rush of pride at her reaction. "It's just the beginning. Thoros believes I can learn more, but it will take time." As they sat together, the flames flickering between them, Jon felt a sense of purpose igniting within him. He was not just a Stark bastard, he was a young man on the brink of discovering his true self, a journey intertwined with the magic of the world and the love he shared with Ygritte. As they walked through the streets of King's Landing, Jon felt a sense of determination solidifying within him. He was not just a Stark bastard, he was a force for change, a beacon of hope for those who felt powerless. With his friends by his side, he was ready to face the challenges that lay ahead, to embrace the flames of prophecy and forge a new destiny. But the shadows of King's Landing loomed ever closer, and Jon knew that the Lannisters would not sit idly by. He could feel their eyes watching, their plots weaving through the city like a dark cloud. But he understood that they would need to be cautious. As Jon continued his training with Thoros, delving deeper into the mysteries of magic and prophecy, he learned how to harness the flames, to listen to their whispers and understand their power. But with each lesson, he felt the weight of destiny pressing down on him, the flames of prophecy guiding him toward a future filled with uncertainty. One evening, as they practiced under the flickering candlelight, Thoros paused, his expression serious. "Jon, the flames are showing me something," he said, his voice low. "They are warning me of a great darkness approaching. You must be prepared." Jon's heart raced at the priest's words. "What kind of darkness?" "I cannot see it clearly," Thoros admitted, his brow furrowed in concentration. "But I sense that it will test your resolve. You must be ready to face whatever comes your way." Jon nodded, feeling the weight of Thoros' warning. He understood that the flames were not just a source of power, they were a reflection of the choices he would have to make. He was determined to embrace his destiny, to fight for those he loved, and protect the realm from the encroaching darkness. The morning sun filtered through the lush greenery of the gardens, casting dappled shadows on the cobblestones. Jon Snow leaned against a stone wall, enjoying a rare moment of peace amidst the chaos of King's Landing. The air was fragrant with the scent of blooming flowers, and the distant sounds of laughter and chatter from the castle echoed softly in the background. Ygritte was perched on a low wall nearby, her dark hair catching the sunlight. She tossed a piece of bread into the air, catching it deftly before taking a bite. "You know," she called out, her voice teasing, "for a Stark you sure have a lot of lordly airs about you. What's next? Are you going to start demanding that I call you my lord?" Jon chuckled, shaking his head. "You'd never manage it, Ygritte. You're far too fond of your sharp tongue." "Ah, but that's what makes me so charming," she replied with a wink, tossing another piece of bread at him. It struck him squarely in the chest, and he laughed, the sound echoing through the garden. The tension of the past weeks began to melt away, replaced by the simple joy of their playful banter. "Is that all you can do? Throw bread?" Jon challenged, a playful glint in his eye. "I thought ladies were supposed to be more graceful." Ygritte feigned offense, clutching her heart dramatically. "A lady, you say? I'll show you who the real lady is." With that, she leapt off the wall and charged at him, her laughter ringing like music in the air. Jon took off running, the two of them weaving through the garden's paths, laughter trailing behind them like a banner. They chased each other around the flower beds, the world outside fading into the background as they indulged in this rare moment of childhood innocence. It felt good to be away from the weight of expectations, if only for a little while. Eventually they slowed, both panting and grinning, leaning against the wall of the courtyard. Ygritte wiped a bead of sweat from her brow, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You know, you care far too much about what these gold-cloaked southerners think," she remarked, a sly smile playing on her lips. "If you ask me, it's a weakness." Jon's smile faltered slightly. "It's not weakness to want to be accepted," Ygritte. "You don't understand what it's like to be a bastard in this world." "Maybe not," she conceded, her tone softening. "But I do know that you're more than just the name they call you. You're a Stark, whether they like it or not." Her words lingered in the air, a promise of understanding and acceptance that warmed Jon's heart. Yet beneath that warmth lay the cold reality of his status, one he could not escape, no matter how much he wished to. Later that day, Jon found himself in the training yard, the sun high in the sky. Thoros of Myr, his ever-enthusiastic mentor, clapped him on the shoulder as they walked through the throngs of squires and knights. "Today, my young wolf, you'll show them what you're made of," Thoros exclaimed, his voice booming over the clamor of swords clashing and the shouts of boys practicing their forms. Jon nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. He had trained hard, but the specter of his status always loomed over him, a shadow that threatened to cloud his confidence. As he stepped onto the sandy ground of the yard, he spotted Ygritte perched on the wall, watching him with keen eyes. "Show them what you've got, Jon Snow," she called out, her voice cutting through the din. "Or are you just going to stand there looking pretty?" Jon felt a rush of adrenaline at her words, a spark igniting within him. He squared his shoulders and faced his opponents, other squires who had been training for longer than he had. They were larger, more experienced, and he could feel their eyes on him, judging and mocking. As the sparring began, Jon quickly fell into a rhythm, his sword dancing in his hands. He parried and thrust, his movements becoming more fluid with each clash. Yet, despite his focus, he could hear the whispers of the Lancel boys nearby. "Look at the bastard trying so hard," one of them sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "What does he think he is, a Stark? He'll never be one of them." Another chimed in. "And that girl of his, what a joke. That's the best he can hope for in life." Jon's heart raced, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. He could feel the heat rising in his cheeks, the sting of their words cutting deeper than any sword. He lunged forward, ready to retaliate, but Thoros stepped in front of him, his hand firm on Jon's shoulder. "Easy there, lad," Thoros warned, his voice low but steady. "Don't let them bait you, you're better than that." But Jon could see Ygritte's expression change, her eyes flashing with indignation. She looked ready to leap off the wall and confront the Lancel boys herself, and that only fueled Jon's anger further. He felt humiliated, restrained by Thoros's grip, while Ygritte's fierce spirit burned bright. "Let me at them," Jon growled, his fists clenched tightly around the hilt of his sword. "I won't stand for their insults." "Then you'll only prove them right," Thoros replied, his tone firm. "You can't let their words control you. Remember, the true strength of a Stark lies not in brute force, but in wisdom and patience." The yard was tense, all eyes on Jon as he fought to regain his composure. The Lannister boys smirked, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Jon felt the weight of their laughter pressing down on him, suffocating. "Show them what you can do, Jon," Ygritte shouted from the wall, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Don't let them see you falter." Thoros, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, raised his voice to break the tension. Now, Jon can beat them all." He paused for effect, but only after he learns how to drink as well as he swings a sword. Laughter erupted from the squires, the tension dissipating as the crowd found humor in Thoros's jest. Jon, still simmering with anger, felt the sting of humiliation linger, but he couldn't help but crack a reluctant smile. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The Lannister boys, realizing they had lost their edge, turned away, their laughter fading into the background. Jon took a deep breath, trying to shake off the weight of their words, but the sting remained. After the sparring session, Jon found a quiet corner of the yard, seeking solace from the day's events. He leaned against a wooden post, watching as the other squires continued their training. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the ground, and Jon felt a familiar heaviness settle in his chest. "Jon." Ygritte's voice broke through his thoughts, and he turned to see her approaching, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "You're brooding again. What happened out there?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Just the usual. The Lancel boys think they can mock me because of my name. It's infuriating." Ygritte stepped closer, her eyes searching his. "So the wolf cub growls but cannot bite," she teased lightly, but her tone shifted as she continued. "You don't need to prove yourself to them, Jon. They're just scared of you." "Scared of me?" he echoed, incredulous. "How can they be scared of a bastard?" "Because you're stronger than they think," she replied, her voice steady. "You're not just a name, Jon. You're a Stark in your heart, and that's what matters." Jon felt a warmth spread through him at her encouragement, a new kind of strength blossoming within his chest. "It's hard, Ygritte. I feel like I'm constantly fighting against shadows." "Shadows can't hurt you unless you let them," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "You have to learn to embrace who you are, bastard or not. You're more than just a name, Jon. You're a warrior, and you have the heart of a Stark." Jon met her gaze, feeling a connection that transcended their banter. In that moment he realized that Ygritte saw him for who he truly was, beyond the labels and judgments. It was a revelation that filled him with a sense of purpose. "Thank you, Ygritte," he said softly, his voice sincere. "You always know how to make me feel better." "Of course I do," she replied, a playful grin returning to her face. "It's my job to keep you in line after all." They shared a laugh, the tension of the day melting away as they fell into their familiar rhythm. Yet beneath the laughter lay an undercurrent of something deeper, an unspoken bond that began to take root between them. As they walked back toward the castle, Jon's thoughts drifted to the upcoming banquet that evening. The court was abuzz with preparations, and he felt the weight of expectation settle on his shoulders. "Do you think they'll be at the banquet tonight?" he asked, a hint of dread creeping into his voice. Ygritte raised an eyebrow, her expression turning serious. "You mean the Lancels? Probably. They love to flaunt their power, especially after a victory." Jon nodded, his stomach tightening at the thought. "I can't stand the way they look at me, like I'm nothing more than a stain on their honor." "Then don't give them the satisfaction," Ygritte advised, her voice firm. "You're more than their mockery. You have friends, allies who respect you. Focus on them." "Easier said than done," Jon replied, a frown creasing his brow. "But you're right, I can't let them dictate how I feel about myself." As they approached the castle, Ygritte turned to him, her expression softening. "Just remember, Jon, you're not alone in this. I'll be right there with you at the banquet, and I won't let them get to you." Jon felt a surge of gratitude at her words, a warmth spreading through him. "Thank you, Ygritte. It means a lot to have you by my side." "Always," she replied, her smile brightening the dimming light of the day. Later that evening, the grand hall was filled with laughter and music, the air thick with the scent of roasted meats and spiced wine. Jon entered the hall alongside Ygritte, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the eyes of the court upon him, judging and assessing, and the weight of their gazes felt like a heavy cloak. As they approached the long table where the nobles sat, Jon caught sight of the Lannister boys. They were gathered in a group, their laughter ringing out like a bell. Jon's stomach twisted at the sight, but Ygritte squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Just ignore them," she whispered, her voice low. "Focus on the people who matter." Jon nodded, steeling himself as he took a seat at the table. He could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken rivalry between the Starks and the Lannisters palpable. As the evening progressed, he tried to engage with those around him, the other squires, the knights, and even some of the ladies, but his mind kept drifting back to the Lannisters. "Look who it is, the bastard of Winterfell," one of the Lannister boys called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "Come to grace us with your presence? How quaint." Jon clenched his jaw, anger rising within him. "What do you want, Lancel?" he shot back, his tone sharper than he intended. "Just wondering if you've brought your wildling girl with you tonight," Lancel sneered, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "I'm sure she'd love to see how real nobility behaves." Ygritte's grip on Jon's hand tightened, and he could feel her anger radiating off her. "Leave him alone," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "You're just a coward hiding behind your family name." "Coward?" Lancel laughed, his friends joining in. "You think you can defend him? You're just a nobody from the north." Jon felt a surge of protectiveness toward Ygritte, but he also felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He could feel the eyes of the court on them, waiting for a reaction. "Enough," he shouted, surprising even himself. "You think your words can cut me? You're wrong. I won't let you dictate who I am." The laughter died down, and a tense silence fell over the hall. Jon took a deep breath, his heart racing. He felt Ygritte's presence beside him, a steadying force against the storm brewing within. "Very noble of you, Snow," Lancel replied, his voice low and mocking. "But we all know you're just a bastard, and that's all you'll ever be." Jon's fist clenched, but before he could respond, Thoros stepped forward, his jovial demeanor cutting through the tension. "Come now, lads, let's not ruin a perfectly good feast with petty insults. Jon here has more important things to worry about, like whether he can drink as well as he fights." Laughter erupted again, the tension dissipating as the nobles turned back to their food and drink. Jon felt a mix of relief and frustration, his heart still pounding in his chest. He glanced at Ygritte, who met his gaze with a knowing smile. "You handled that well," she said softly, her eyes shining with admiration. "Thanks to Thoros," Jon replied, his voice low. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." "You'll find a way," Ygritte assured him, her tone unwavering. "You're stronger than you realize. Just remember that you're not alone in this fight." As the banquet continued, Jon found himself lost in thought. Tharos's earlier words echoed in his mind. You cannot kill every man who mocks you, lad. Better to make them choke on their laughter one day, when the world kneels to you. He leaned back in his chair, contemplating the lessons he had learned that day. The sting of the Lancel boys' insults lingered, but with Ygritte's fire and Thoros' guidance, he began to believe that he could step beyond the shadows of his bastard name. The world may see him as a bastard, a wolf without a pack, but within him burned the spirit of a Stark. And with that spirit, he would forge his own path, one that would lead him to a destiny beyond the confines of his name. Jon glanced at Ygritte, who was engaged in conversation with some of the other ladies at the table. In her gaze, he saw acceptance and strength, a reminder that he was not alone in this fight. Together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, and perhaps, just perhaps, he could rise above the shadows of bastardy. As the evening wore on, Jon felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was uncertain, but with Ygritte by his side, he was ready to embrace whatever came next. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the Red Keep, illuminating the stone walls that seemed to loom over Jon Snow like a judge ready to pass sentence. Jon wandered the dimly lit corridors, his footsteps echoing softly against the cold, unyielding stone. The weight of the day pressed heavily on his shoulders, a burden he could not shake. Another day filled with mockery from the Lannisters, their laughter ringing in his ears like a cruel melody. He felt like a ghost wandering through a place that was both familiar and utterly alien. King's Landing was a world apart from Winterfell. The air here was thick, heavy with the scent of intrigue and deceit, unlike the crisp, clean air of the north that spoke of honor and loyalty. The halls of Winterfell had felt like home, filled with the warmth of family and the certainty of purpose. Here, every shadow seemed to whisper secrets. Every corner held the potential for betrayal. Jon paused for a moment, leaning against a wall, closing his eyes as he tried to calm the storm brewing inside him. Thoros of Myr was fast asleep in his chambers, snoring loudly enough to rattle the windows. Jon had returned to their quarters earlier, hoping for some guidance, but the priest was far gone in his cups, oblivious to the world around him. Jon had wanted to talk, to seek comfort in Thoros' wisdom, but instead he was left alone with his thoughts, his mind racing with the events of the day. He pushed away from the wall, the desire for rest slipping away. Instead, he felt a tug of curiosity, a compulsion to explore the Red Keep, to discover its secrets in the dead of night. As he wandered deeper into the castle, he found himself drawn to the lower levels, where the air was cooler and the shadows danced like specters. As he moved through the dimly lit corridors, a flash of movement caught his eye. A small cat darted across his path, its fur a dark shadow against the stone floor. Intrigued, Jon followed it, his footsteps silent as he trailed the creature deeper into the bowels of the castle. The cat led him through a series of twists and turns until it skittered through a half-open door, disappearing into the darkness beyond. Jon hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the empty corridor behind him. The allure of the unknown was too strong to resist. He pushed the door open wider, stepping into the narrow passage that lay beyond. The air was stale, thick with dust and the scent of damp stone. He could hear the faint trickle of water somewhere in the distance, a reminder that even the Red Keep had its secrets hidden away. As he ventured further into the tunnel, Jon noticed that the walls were lined with cobwebs, the remnants of a long-forgotten place. He could hear muffled voices drifting through the darkness, hushed and slippery, the kind that made him feel guilty just for hearing them. He paused, pressing his back against the cool stone wall, straining to listen. "The last dragon must be sheltered still," a voice said, calm and silken, sending a chill down Jon's spine. It was a voice he recognized, one that belonged to Varys, the spider. Jon's heart raced as he strained to hear more. "The boy is too reckless, the girl too young," Varys continued, his tone precise, as if he were discussing the fate of pawns on a chessboard. "We must ensure their safety until the time is right." Another voice, booming and accented, broke in. "Patience, Varys. Time will fatten the lion and dull the stag. We need only wait for the right moment." Jon's breath caught in his throat. The last dragon? He had heard tales of dragons in his youth, stories that spoke of fire and destruction. He imagined them soaring through the sky, wings beating like thunder, consuming armies in their fiery breath. But this was different. These were not tales of glory. They were discussions of strategy, of hidden children across the sea. "A storm is coming from across the sea, but not yet," Varys continued, his voice low and conspiratorial. "The fire sleeps until the world forgets its heat." Jon's mind raced, piecing together fragments of information. A boy and a girl hidden away. A dragon that needed shelter. Was this what Thoros had seen in his visions? He felt a mixture of fear and excitement, the thrill of uncovering secrets that could change the course of history. But he also felt the weight of caution pressing down on him. These were secrets men would kill for. One day, the realm will be ruled by fire once more, Varys said, his voice steady and unyielding. We must see to it that the flame is not snuffed too soon. Jon held his breath, not daring to move. The implications of their words were staggering. He thought of Daenerys Targaryen, the last surviving member of a family that had once ruled Westeros with an iron fist. He had heard whispers of her exile, of her brother Viserys' desperate ambition. But now, it seemed, there was more at stake than he had ever imagined. Robert is too dangerous now, too beloved from his recent victory. Varys warned Illyrio, his tone grave. Not yet. The game must wait. Jon's heart pounded in his chest. Robert Baratheon, the king who had taken the throne through bloodshed and war, was a force to be reckoned with. Jon could see the pieces of a larger game falling into place, a game that he was not yet prepared to play. As the voices faded into silence, Jon felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. He imagined the dragons, fierce and magnificent, soaring across the sky. He pictured the boy and girl, hidden away, their fates intertwined with the fate of the realm. What did it mean for him, a bastard with no claim to power or title? Did the gods have a plan for him, or were they simply toying with him like a cat with a mouse? His thoughts spiraled, and he felt a rush of emotions. Fear, hope, anger. He was a Stark, yet he was also a bastard, an outcast in a world that valued bloodlines above all else. Could he ever rise above his status? Could he ever be more than just Jon Snow, the Lord's bastard? But then he remembered Thoros' earlier words about him. Wolf's blood, wreathed in fire. Could the gods have meant him, or were they speaking of the dragon children hidden across the sea? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He had always felt a connection to the north, to the cold and the snow, but now he was beginning to see the flames that flickered in the distance. Just as he was about to retreat from the passage, a rat scurried too close, startling him. He nearly jumped back, his heart racing as he fought to remain silent. He heard Varys pause mid-whisper, as if sensing something in the darkness. Jon held his breath, praying that he wouldn't be discovered. After what felt like an eternity, Varys continued speaking, his voice low again. We must be cautious, Illyrio. The walls have ears, and the wrong word can bring ruin. Jon felt a cold sweat break out on his brow. He needed to leave, to escape back into the moonlit halls of the Red Keep, before he was caught in a web of intrigue far beyond his understanding. He carefully retreated, his heart pounding in his chest, every sound amplified in the stillness of the passage. As he emerged into the corridor, he took a moment to collect himself, leaning against the cool stone wall. The moonlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the path ahead. He was shaken, his mind racing with the implications of what he had heard. Dragons, hidden children, a game of thrones that he had unwittingly stumbled into. That night, sleep eluded Jon. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows dancing above him like phantoms. The words of Varys and Illyrio echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of the secrets he had uncovered. Dragons, a boy and a girl hidden across the sea, and the knowledge that the realm was on the brink of something monumental. He thought of Thoros, the drunken priest who had become a mentor of sorts, and wondered if he should share what he had learned. But as he lay there, he realized some secrets were too dangerous to share, even with a man who was often lost in his cups. The weight of the knowledge pressed down on him, a burden he wasn't sure he was ready to bear. Jon's thoughts drifted to the north, to Winterfell and the life he had left behind. He missed the cold, the snow, the certainty of his place in the world. Here, in King's Landing, everything felt uncertain and precarious. He was a wolf among lions, and the danger was palpable. Could he trust anyone in this treacherous court? The Lancels were cunning, and their eyes were everywhere. He remembered their laughter, their mocking words, and the way they reveled in his discomfort. But now, with the knowledge of dragons and hidden heirs, he felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps he could find a way to turn the tables, to become more than just a target for their amusement. As the hours dragged on, Jon's mind raced with possibilities. He imagined the boy and girl across the sea, their fates intertwined with his own. What if he could find a way to help them? What if he could play a part in the unfolding drama of the realm? The thought sent a thrill through him, igniting a spark of determination. He resolved that he would keep the secret. For now, he would watch and wait, learning the intricacies of the game being played around him. If he was to navigate the treacherous waters of King's Landing, he would need to be cautious, to listen more than he spoke. In the days that followed, Jon kept his head down, focusing on his training and the tasks assigned to him. He watched the interactions between the nobles, the subtle glances and whispered conversations, all while keeping the knowledge of the dragons close to his heart. He felt a growing sense of purpose, a desire to understand the world of politics that had previously felt so alien to him. Thoros, despite his drunkenness, seemed to sense a change in Jon. "You've got the look of a man who's seen something he shouldn't," he remarked one evening. His voice slurred but perceptive. "What's weighing on your mind, boy?" Jon hesitated, the urge to confide in Thoros battling with his instinct to protect the knowledge he had gained. "Just the usual," he replied, forcing a smile. "The Lannisters are as insufferable as ever." Thoros laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "Aye, they are. But remember, lad, the game is not just about swords and strength. It's about wit and cunning. You've got to learn to play it if you want to survive." Jon nodded, his mind racing with thoughts of the game he had stumbled into. He was beginning to understand that survival in King's Landing required more than just physical strength. It required intelligence and patience. And with the knowledge of the dragons lurking in the shadows, he felt a sense of urgency to prepare himself. As the weeks passed, the tension in King's Landing grew palpable. Whispers of unrest spread through the city, and Jon could feel the undercurrents of discontent simmering just beneath the surface. The common folk spoke of the king's heavy taxes, of the Lannisters' growing power, and of the Targaryens who remained hidden across the sea. Jon found himself drawn to the stories of the Targaryens, their legacy of fire and blood. He spent hours in the library, poring over old texts and histories, searching for any information that might shed light on the children Varys and Illyrio had spoken of. He learned of Aegon the Conqueror and his dragons, of the Targaryen civil wars that had torn the realm apart, and of the last remnants of a once great dynasty. The more he learned, the more he felt the weight of destiny pressing down on him. He was a Stark, a wolf in a world of lions, but he was also a player in a game that was far larger than himself. The thought both terrified and exhilarated him. One evening, as he stood on the battlements of the Red Keep, gazing out at the sprawling city below, Ygritte joined him. "You look deep in thought, Jon," she said, her voice soft against the wind. He turned to her, a smile breaking through the weight of his worries. "Just contemplating the future," he replied, his tone light. "It seems like the world is changing." "Change is inevitable," Ygritte said, leaning against the stone wall beside him. "But it's what we do in the face of change that defines us." Jon nodded, her words resonating with him. He felt a sense of camaraderie with her, a bond forged through shared struggles and unspoken understanding. "I've been thinking about the stories we hear, about the past, and what it means for our future." Ygritte raised an eyebrow, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "What stories?" "About the Targaryens," he admitted, his voice low. "About the last dragon and the children hidden across the sea." Ygritte's expression shifted, a mix of surprise and intrigue. "You've been digging into the past, then? Be careful, Jon. The past can be a dangerous thing to uncover." "I know," he replied, feeling a sense of urgency, "but I can't help but wonder what it all means. If there is a chance for change, for something better, shouldn't we explore it?" Ygritte regarded him for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. "You're not just a bastard, Jon. You're a Stark, and that means you have a responsibility to your family and your name. But you also have to decide what kind of man you want to be." Jon took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling over him. "I want to be more than just a name. I want to make a difference." "Then be careful," Ygritte warned gently. "The game is dangerous, and the stakes are high. But if you're determined to play, I'll stand by your side." As the sun set over King's Landing, casting a warm glow over the city, Jon felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer just a restless bastard wandering the halls of the Red Keep. He was a player in a game that could reshape the realm. With the knowledge of dragons and hidden heirs, he had the potential to forge his own destiny. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and intrigue, but with Ygritte by his side he felt a glimmer of hope. Together they would navigate the shadows of politics, uncovering secrets and forging alliances that could change the course of history. Jon gazed out over the city, the flickering lights below a reflection of the fire that burned within him. He was ready to embrace the challenges that lay ahead, to step into the shadows of bastardy and emerge as something greater. The world was changing, and so was he. Dawn broke over King's Landing, casting a muted light that struggled to pierce the heavy air of the Red Keep. The heat was stifling, thick with the stench of sweat and the whispers of court intrigue that lingered like a thick fog. Jon Snow stood on the balcony of his room, his gaze fixed on the bustling streets below. The vibrant life of the South felt alien to him, so different from the cold, quiet solitude of Winterfell. Today was the day Ned Stark would leave for the North, and with each passing moment, a quiet anxiety gnawed at Jon's insides. He could feel the weight of impending separation pressing down on him, a reminder that the warmth of family was as fleeting as the dawn. The thought of his father riding away filled him with dread, a sense of loss that clawed at his chest. As he stood there, lost in thought, he recalled the stories of Winterfell, the howling winds and the snow-covered trees, the way the moonlight turned the world into a silver dream. Those memories felt distant now, overshadowed by the reality of the South. He wondered if he would ever feel that peace again, or if the chaos of King's Landing would consume him entirely. In an attempt to escape the oppressive atmosphere of the Red Keep, Jon slipped away to the small royal gardens, a hidden oasis amidst the stone walls. It was there he found Ygritte, her fiery hair a beacon against the lush greenery. She leaned against a tree, a playful smile dancing on her lips as she caught sight of him. "Look who decided to abandon his brooding," she teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "The bastard wolf who forgot how to smile." Jon couldn't help but grin, her lightheartedness breaking through his tension. "I'm not brooding," he protested, though the weight in his chest betrayed him. "I'm just thinking." "Thinking too much, if you ask me," Ygritte replied, stepping closer. "What's got you all twisted up? Afraid your Lord Father will forget you when he rides north?" He sighed, the truth of her words hitting too close to home. "It's just, I don't want to be left behind. I want to go with him." "Maybe it's time you stopped following your Lord Father's shadow and found your own path," she suggested, her tone serious now. "Thoros sees something in you, doesn't he? Why not trust that?" Jon opened his mouth to respond, but she cut him off with a playful shove. "Stop defending that drunken priest. He smells like wine and bad decisions." "Hey, he's not that bad," Jon defended, a smile creeping back onto his face. "He has his moments of wisdom." "Wisdom, more like ramblings of a man who drinks to forget his own failures," she quipped, her laughter infectious. Their banter continued, light and teasing, until Ygritte suddenly darted away, her laughter echoing through the gardens. Jon chased after her, their playful chase weaving through the hedges until he nearly tripped over his own feet. Ygritte's laughter rang in his ears, and for the first time in what felt like ages, Jon felt light, unburdened by the weight of responsibility and expectation. As they paused by a fountain, Ygritte turned serious, her expression softening. "You know, Jon, you're more than just Ned Stark's son. You have your own story to tell. Don't let anyone else write it for you." Jon looked into her eyes, the sincerity of her words striking a chord within him. "I wish I knew what that story was," he admitted. "I feel lost, like I'm caught between two worlds." "Then maybe it's time to forge your own path," she replied, her voice steady. "You have the strength of a wolf, but you also have the fire of a Targaryen waiting to awaken. Embrace it." After their stolen moment, Jon found his way to the practice yard, where Thoros was already swinging his sword with a surprising vigor, despite the evident hangover that clouded his movements. The sun glinted off the blade, and Jon felt a surge of determination. "Come here, boy," Thoros called, his voice a mix of authority and mirth. "Time to spar. You can't brood your way through life." Jon approached, feeling the tension in his muscles. "I'm not in the mood, Thoros." "Neither am I," Thoros replied, grinning. "But that's not going to stop us. Now draw your sword." As they clashed, Thoros' laughter filled the yard, but his lessons ran deeper than mere swordplay. "Don't brood on what you've lost, strike with what you have," he instructed, his breath coming in huffs as they moved. Jon swung, his blade meeting Thoros' with a clang. "What if what I have isn't enough? Then you find more," Thoros countered, sidestepping Jon's attack with ease. "Sometimes a man drinks to forget, other times to remember. Learn which one I am today." Their sparring continued, and between breaths, Thoros muttered cryptic lines about fire, destiny, and Rahalor's will. Jon half dismissed them as drunken ramblings, yet they unsettled him. "Thoros," Jon said between swings. "What do you mean by that?" "Ah, boy," Thoros replied, pausing to grip Jon's shoulder, his expression suddenly serious. "The wolf in you makes you strong, but the fire I see, that might make you dangerous." Jon didn't fully understand, but the weight of Thoros' words stuck with him, a lingering echo in the back of his mind. As they finished their training, Thoros leaned against the wall, wiping the sweat from his brow. You know, Jon, there's more to life than just swinging a sword. You must learn to navigate the politics of this place. The Iron Throne is a game, and those who play it must be clever. Jon frowned, the idea of court intrigue feeling foreign and overwhelming. I'm not sure I want to play any games. I just want to protect my family. Thoros chuckled, a hint of admiration in his voice. Then you must learn to be a player, not a pawn. The world is changing, and you will need to adapt. Later, in the shaded halls of the Red Keep, Ned sought out Thoros, his expression guarded. The air was thick with tension as he confronted the priest, distrust evident in his voice. If you mean to guide my son, do it with honor. He's not your pawn, nor your torchbearer for this ruler of yours. Thoros' laughter was half-drunk, but serious, beneath the surface. Stark, you think I chose him. You don't choose fire when it takes to the wood, it simply burns. The two men stood at an impasse, debating Jon's future. Ned insisted on protecting Jon from being exploited, while Thoros argued that destiny didn't bend to the will of fathers. You can't shield him forever, Thoros warned, his tone shifting. He must learn to navigate the flames on his own. Despite the tension, a grudging respect grew between them. Both men cared deeply for Jon, even if their visions of his future clashed. You may think you're protecting him, but the world is a harsh place, Thoros continued. He will face challenges that you cannot foresee, and he will need to be prepared. Ned's brow furrowed, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. I will do whatever it takes to keep him safe. He deserves a chance at a normal life. Normal? Thoros scoffed. In this world, there is no such thing. You must accept that he is destined for greatness, whether you like it or not. Before his departure, Ned attended one last council meeting with Robert. The king lounged at the head of the table, a goblet of wine in hand, his demeanor half-drunk and jovial. Gods, Stark, you've no taste for the games here. You're like a fish on dry land. But go then, hide in your snow. Beneath the jest, Jon could sense Robert's reluctance to let Ned leave. The king trusted him above all others, and the bond forged in the fires of rebellion still lingered between them. As they reminisced about the past, the rebellion, lost loves, and how the world had changed, Robert's laughter echoed through the chamber. And what of your little wolf pup, he joked, a grin spreading across his face. Chasing a drunken priest, I see? Ned bristled at the mention of Jon, but he held his tongue. The meeting ended with an unspoken heaviness, the realization that Robert was already slipping into the corrupt, pleasure-driven king he would become. Yet Ned walked away more determined than ever to protect his family, especially Jon. As he left the council chamber, Ned couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was brewing in the shadows. He had heard whispers of unrest, rumors of plots against the crown. The thought unsettled him, and he resolved to keep a close eye on Jon, ensuring he remained safe amidst the chaos. The heart of the chapter lay in the stables, where Ned met Jon, one last time before his departure. The air was thick with unspoken truths, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. Keep your honor, Jon, Ned said, his voice steady but laced with emotion, even when surrounded by liars. Jon's heart raced, desperation creeping into his voice. Will you ever tell me about my mother? Ned faltered, the familiar pain flickering in his eyes. I promise I will, he said, though the vagueness of his words left Jon feeling unsettled. Trust Thoros cautiously, Ned warned, his gaze piercing. But learn what you can. Even fools have wisdom, and Thoros is no fool, no matter how he plays the part. Ygritte appeared then, a teasing smile on her face as she joined them in the stables. What's this? A Stark family farewell? Don't be too sad, Jon. I'll keep you entertained while your father is off freezing in the north. Ned watched them carefully, perhaps sensing the unspoken feelings between them, but he said nothing. Their goodbye was bittersweet, filled with the weight of love and worry. As Ned mounted his horse, Jon felt a part of himself being left behind, a piece of his heart riding north with his father. Remember, Jon, Ned called back, his voice carrying a sense of finality. You are stronger than you know. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Jon nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. I won't, father, I promise. As Ned rode away, Jon felt the ground beneath him shift, the reality of his father's absence settling heavily on his shoulders. He turned back to Ygritte, who was watching him with a knowing expression. Are you all right? She asked softly. stepping closer. I don't know, Jon admitted, the vulnerability spilling out. It feels like everything is changing, and I'm not sure I'm ready for it. Ygritte reached out, placing a comforting hand on his arm. Change is inevitable, Jon, but it's how we respond to that change that defines us. You'll find your way. As Ned departed, Thoros stood beside Jon, watching the dust of the company fade down the King's Road. He muttered under his breath to the flames of a nearby torch. The boy is yours, Lord of Light. I only hope I'm not leading him to the pyre. Jon glanced at Thoros, unease settling in the pit of his stomach. He wanted to ask what the priest meant, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he lingered in the stables, the weight of his father's absence settling heavily on his shoulders. In the quiet, he overheard a pair of servants whispering nearby. Their words caught his attention, fragments of conversation that sent a shiver down his spine. Across the sea, last of the dragons. Illyrio's coin. Before he could catch more, the servants noticed him and scattered, leaving Jon with a sense of foreboding. Court gossip, perhaps, or drunken nonsense. Yet, the memory of Thoros' mutterings about fire and destiny stirred in his mind, a troubling echo of what lay ahead. Later, when Jon found Thoros by the torch, he almost voiced his concerns, but held his tongue. Thoros, watching Jon's hesitation, smirked to himself. The boy has ears like a wolf. Sooner or later, he'll hear too much. As the sun climbed higher, Jon stood in the stables, watching the road where his father had vanished, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on him. In that moment, he understood that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, and he would have to navigate the flames of his destiny alone. Suddenly, a commotion erupted outside the stables, pulling Jon from his thoughts. He rushed to the entrance, curiosity piqued. A group of guards was gathered, their voices raised in alarm. "What's happening?" Jon asked one of the guards, a familiar face named Ser Jorah. "There's been a disturbance in the market," Ser Jorah replied, his brow furrowed with concern. "A fight broke out, and it seems there are whispers of a plot against the crown." Jon's heart raced. A plot? What kind of plot? Ser Jorah shook his head, frustration evident. "We don't know yet, but we must remain vigilant. The city is restless, and with the king's absence, tensions are rising." Jon felt a surge of determination. "I want to help. I can't just stand by while chaos unfolds." Ser Jorah regarded him with a mixture of surprise and caution. "You're not a knight yet, Jon. Your place is here." "But I can learn. I can be of use," Jon insisted, his voice rising with urgency. "Very well," Ser Jorah relented, a reluctant smile breaking through. "Stay close, and do as I say. We'll need all hands on deck if things escalate." As they moved toward the market, Jon's heart pounded in his chest. He felt a sense of purpose, a fire igniting within him. Perhaps this was the beginning of his own story, a chance to forge a path that was uniquely his. As they neared the market square, the chaos unfolded before him. Shouts echoed through the air, and Jon could see a crowd gathering, their faces twisted in anger and fear. "Stay behind me," Ser Jorah commanded, drawing his sword as they pushed through the throng. Jon's pulse quickened. He was no longer just Ned Stark's son, but a participant in the unfolding drama of King's Landing. Amidst the chaos, Jon caught a glimpse of a figure in the crowd, a cloaked man whose presence seemed to draw attention. He felt a strange pull toward the figure, a sense that he was somehow connected to the turmoil. "Who is that?" Jon asked, pointing. Ser Jorah squinted through the crowd. "I don't know, but we should keep our distance, and I have to leave soon to catch up with Lord Stark." But Jon couldn't shake the feeling that this was a moment of significance, a thread in the tapestry of his destiny. As the crowd surged, he took a step forward, ready to confront whatever lay ahead, the fire within him growing stronger with each heartbeat. The day was far from over, and Jon Snow was ready to embrace the challenges that awaited him, determined to carve his own path amidst the flames of fate. As the chaos in the market escalated, Jon pushed forward through the crowd, his heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. The cloaked figure moved with an air of authority, drawing the attention of the angry townsfolk who shouted accusations of betrayal and corruption. Jon's instincts kicked in. He felt a surge of responsibility to protect those around him, and with a deep breath, he stepped between the figure and the crowd, calling out for calm. "We can't solve our problems with violence," he shouted, his voice firm yet steady. To his surprise, the crowd paused, their anger wavering as they turned to him, recognizing the son of Ned Stark standing resolute. The cloaked man glanced at Jon, a flicker of intrigue in his eyes, before disappearing into the throng, leaving Jon with a sense of purpose and the realization that he was no longer just a bystander in the game of politics. He was a player, ready to carve his own path in a world fraught with danger and intrigue. Jon Snow awoke drenched in sweat, his small body trembling under the thin blanket Thoros had provided. The dream lingered in his mind like smoke, curling and twisting into shapes he could barely grasp. He could still feel the heat on his skin, the oppressive air of the cavern wrapping around him, heavy with ash and the scent of burning. In the darkness, a massive dragon loomed, its black scales shimmering like melted obsidian, eyes burning like coals. It had called his name, not with sound, but in the depths of his mind, a whisper that resonated through his very being. Blood of fire, child of snow, mine. The sensation was so real that Jon could feel the rumble of the dragon's wings in his chest, the sheer power of it vibrating through him. He pressed the small direwolf cloth from Winterfell against his face, breathing hard, trying to calm the storm within. Thoros, half drunk but unusually serious, sat up and studied him, the flickering light of the dying embers casting shadows across his face. "The Lord of Light touches some men with visions," he said softly, his voice grave. "But what they mean is never clear. Fire shows you truth, lad, but never the whole of it. Be careful." Jon nodded, unsure whether to believe him. The words hung in the air, heavy with implications he could not yet comprehend. The morning after the dream, restless and anxious, Jon wandered into the streets with Ygritte at his side. She had been waiting near the stables, her grin wide and mischievous, ready for adventure. "Come on, let's see the city wake up," she said, tugging at his sleeve, her excitement infectious. As they ventured deeper into Flea Bottom, the smells of smoke, sweat, and stale bread mingled, creating a tapestry of the city's life that overwhelmed Jon's senses. The narrow streets were alive with the sounds of merchants shouting their wares and children playing, their laughter ringing out like music amidst the chaos. Suddenly a commotion drew their attention. A group of gold cloaks had cornered a beggar boy, shoving him against a wall for allegedly stealing bread. Jon's chest tightened with indignation, a familiar fire igniting within him. "Hey," he shouted, running forward, his small fists clenched. "Leave him alone." Ygritte grabbed his arm, her eyes wide. "Jon, wait, don't." But it was too late. Jon burst into the fray, pushing against the gold cloaks with all his might. The scuffle was brief but chaotic. He took a few bruises, but the adrenaline coursing through him dulled the pain. Ygritte, agile and clever, darted around one of the soldiers, distracting him just long enough for the boy to scramble free. Just as a guard aimed to strike at Jon, Thoros appeared, stepping into the fray with an authoritative presence. "Enough," he barked, his voice booming like thunder. The gold cloaks backed off, grumbling under their breath, and Thoros pulled Jon away, shaking his head in disapproval. "You are brave," Thoros said quietly, his voice tinged with respect, "but reckless too. Courage without caution will get you killed, lad." Jon nodded, feeling a mix of pride and embarrassment. He had acted on instinct, but the reality of the situation settled heavily on his shoulders. Later, as they walked away from the scene, Ygritte teased him mercilessly. "You fight like you're trying to prove something to the world," she laughed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Jon blushed, secretly pleased by her attention, even if her words stung a little. "Maybe I am," he replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. "Maybe I want to show them I'm not afraid." "Good luck with that," Ygritte said, rolling her eyes playfully. "But you should think before you leap next time. Not everyone will back you up like I did." That evening, Thoros lit a small fire in their shared chamber. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the warmth enveloped them in a comforting embrace. Jon sat cross-legged on the floor, his gaze fixed on the fire as it crackled and popped. "Long ago," Thoros began, his voice low, "I saw a dragon born of shadow and fire in my flames. I thought it was madness or perhaps the wine talking. But now," he glanced at Jon, his expression heavy with concern, "I wonder if the Lord of Light has set you on a path far bigger than knighthood." Jon's eyes widened, his heart racing at the mention of a dragon. A dragon? Me? The idea seemed absurd yet thrilling, igniting a spark of curiosity within him. "Dreams make men mad if they think too much on them," Thoros warned, his tone serious. "Better to keep your steel ready, your mind sharp, and your heart balanced. Fire teaches us, but it can also burn if you're not careful." Jon nodded silently, the weight of destiny pressing on his small shoulders. He could feel the gravity of Thoros' words, but doubt gnawed at him. What did it mean to be connected to a dragon? Was he truly destined for greatness, or was it all just a figment of his imagination? As the fire flickered, Jon couldn't shake the feeling that something was stirring within him, a connection to something greater than himself. The dream haunted him, intertwining with his thoughts and fears. Later that night, after Thoros had fallen asleep, Ygritte snuck into Jon's chambers. She plopped onto the edge of his straw mattress, her presence a comforting anchor in the storm of his thoughts. "You brood too much," she said, nudging him playfully. "If a dragon wants you, I'll fight it myself." Jon laughed nervously, scratching the back of his neck. "I don't think it's real," he said, though uncertainty laced his words. "Maybe," she replied, softening her tone. "But I like being near you. You listen. You actually listen." They whispered for a while, sharing stories of their childhoods, the city, and small dreams of adventure. Ygritte spoke of her life beyond the walls of the Red Keep, of the wild lands where she had roamed free, unburdened by the weight of nobility or court politics. Jon listened intently, captivated by her tales of freedom and exploration. "I want to see the world like you do," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper, "but I feel trapped here." "Then we'll find a way to escape," Ygritte declared, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "One day we'll climb the walls and run away together. You'll see the north and I'll show you the wild." The thought thrilled Jon, igniting a sense of hope within him. They shared dreams of distant lands, of dragons soaring through the sky, and adventures that awaited them beyond the confines of the Red Keep. In that moment their friendship felt easy, comfortable, and alive, a lightness Jon had not felt in months. As they talked, the weight of Jon's dreams and the expectations placed upon him began to lift, replaced by the warmth of companionship. He felt a connection with Ygritte that went beyond mere friendship. It was a bond forged in the fires of shared experiences and understanding. The next day, Jon was sent by Thoros to deliver a message to the small council. The halls of the Red Keep were intimidating, echoing with hurried footsteps and whispered secrets. Jon walked with purpose, though his heart raced with anxiety. He paused near a doorway, overhearing Varys murmur to a servant, "A flame in the north and a shadow in the east." Jon frowned, the words echoing in his mind. They sent a chill crawling over him, resonating with the dragon dream he could not shake. What did it mean? He didn't understand, but the significance loomed large, a puzzle he was not yet equipped to solve. As he entered the small council chamber, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The council members were engaged in heated discussions, their voices rising and falling like the tide. Jon stood at the edge, clutching the message tightly, feeling small and insignificant amidst the powerful figures surrounding him. "Make sure the guards are doubled at the gates," one lord said, his voice sharp with authority. "We cannot afford any mistakes." Jon's heart raced as he listened to the snippets of conversation, each word a reminder of the dangerous game being played in the Red Keep. The council dismissed him quickly, barely acknowledging his presence, and he returned to Thoros, his mind buzzing with uncertainty. "What did you hear?" Thoros asked, noticing the troubled expression on Jon's face. I overheard something about a flame in the north," Jon replied hesitantly. "What does it mean?" Thoros's brow furrowed, and he leaned closer, his voice low. "There are many flames in this world, Jon. Some burn bright and true, while others flicker and fade. But beware of shadows, they often conceal truths we are not ready to face." Jon nodded, feeling the weight of Thoros's words. The world around him was filled with secrets and dangers, and he was caught in the middle of it all, a child trying to navigate a treacherous path. As Jon walked back through the bustling streets of King's Landing, his mind was still swirling with thoughts of the small council and the ominous words he had overheard. He felt a strange sense of foreboding, as if the city itself were alive with whispers and shadows. Suddenly, he spotted a familiar face among the crowd. It was the beggar boy he had defended earlier. The boy was huddled against a wall, his clothes tattered and his face dirty, but his eyes held a spark of defiance. Jon approached him cautiously. "Are you all right?" Jon asked, kneeling beside the boy. The boy looked up, surprise flickering in his gaze. You helped me," he stammered, his voice a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "Why would you do that?" "Because it was wrong," Jon replied simply. "No one deserves to be treated like that." The boy nodded, his expression softening. "My name is Tom. I don't have much, but I can help you if you need it." Jon smiled, touched by the boy's offer. "I appreciate it, Tom, but I'm not sure what I need help with. Things are complicated." "Everything is complicated," Tom said with a shrug. "But sometimes you just have to keep moving forward. You can't let them break you." Jon felt a sense of kinship with Tom, realizing that they were both navigating a world that often seemed cruel and unforgiving. "What do you do around here?" he asked, genuinely curious. "I help where I can," Tom replied, his voice gaining confidence. "I know the streets better than most. If you ever need to know something, just ask." Jon pondered this, feeling the weight of his own responsibilities pressing down on him. "Maybe I will," he said, standing up. "Stay safe, Tom." As he walked away, Jon couldn't shake the feeling that he had formed a connection with someone who understood the struggles of life in Flea Bottom. The encounter had given him a sense of purpose, a reminder that even in a city filled with danger, there were still good people fighting to survive. That night, Jon dreamed again. The glow of burning eyes and wings unfurling against the night sky filled his mind, the dragon's presence more vivid than ever. He could feel the heat radiating from its massive body, the power that coursed through him, binding them together in a way he could not fully understand. When he woke, he found Ygritte asleep beside him, her presence a comforting reminder that he was not alone in this chaotic world. Thoros snored softly in the other room, the sound a lullaby against the backdrop of his swirling thoughts. As Jon lay there staring at the ceiling, a single thought haunted him. "If a dragon calls for me, will I answer?" Caught between the innocence of childhood and the weight of destiny, Jon felt the pull of something greater than himself. The dream had awakened a fire within him, a longing for adventure and purpose. He was no longer just a boy in the shadow of his father. He was a child of fire and ice, destined to forge his own path in a world filled with dragons and danger. The following morning, Jon awoke with a renewed sense of determination. He dressed quickly, thoughts racing through his mind as he prepared to face the day. The dreams of dragons and the weight of destiny pressed heavily on his shoulders. But he felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. He found Ygritte outside, her hair wild and unkempt, a stark contrast to the polished ladies of the court. She grinned at him, the sunlight catching the mischief in her eyes. "Ready for another adventure, Snow?" Jon nodded, feeling the warmth of her enthusiasm wash over him. "What do you have in mind?" "Let's explore the city more," she suggested. "There's a whole world out there beyond the walls of the Red Keep. We can find out what the people really think about the crown." Jon felt a thrill of excitement. "All right, but we have to be careful. I don't want to get caught again." "Where's the fun in that?" Ygritte laughed, her spirit infectious. "Come on, let's see what secrets we can uncover." They set off into the streets of King's Landing, weaving through the bustling crowds and vibrant market stalls. As they walked, Jon felt the weight of his dreams and the burdens of his lineage begin to lift, replaced by the exhilaration of discovery and friendship. As they wandered through the market, Jon and Ygritte overheard snippets of conversation that hinted at the unrest brewing in the city. People whispered about food shortages, rising prices, and the growing discontent among the common folk. "Did you hear about the bread riots?" a woman exclaimed to her friend. "The gold cloaks beat a man to death for trying to steal a loaf." Jon exchanged a concerned glance with Ygritte. "This isn't right," he murmured. "People are suffering, and the crown doesn't seem to care." "Maybe we should do something," Ygritte suggested, her eyes shining with determination. "We can't just stand by while they're treated like this." Jon hesitated. He felt the weight of his name, of his father's legacy, pressing down on him. "But what can we do? We're just kids." "Kids can change the world," Ygritte replied fiercely. "If we raise our voices, maybe others will join us. Maybe we can make a difference." Inspired by her words, Jon felt a surge of courage. "All right, let's find a way to help. We can gather people and speak out against the injustices." As they plotted their course, Jon felt a sense of purpose solidifying within him. He was no longer just a boy lost in the shadows of his father's legacy. He was becoming a voice for the voiceless, a champion for those who had none. That evening, as they returned to the Red Keep, Jon felt a fire burning within him, fueled by the day's events and the conversations they had overheard. He knew that he had to act, to stand up for those who could not stand up for themselves. "Thoros," Jon called as he entered their chamber, where the Red Priest was seated by the fire, a goblet of wine in hand. "We need to talk." Thoros looked up, raising an eyebrow. "What troubles you, boy?" "People are suffering out there," Jon said, his voice steady. "We can't just ignore it. We need to do something to help them." Thoros regarded him thoughtfully, the flickering flames casting shadows across his face. "The world is a complicated place, Jon. Change is not easily won, and the powerful do not often listen to the cries of the weak. But we have to try," Jon insisted, his passion igniting the air between them. If we don't speak up, who will? I can't just sit back and do nothing when I know people are hurting. Thoros took a deep breath, his expression softening. You have the heart of a lion, Jon, but be cautious. The road you wish to tread is fraught with danger. Speak your truth, but be prepared for the consequences. Jon nodded, feeling the weight of Thoros' words. He understood the risks involved, but the thought of standing idly by while others suffered was unbearable. I will be careful, he promised, but I won't back down. That night, as Jon prepared for bed, he felt a sense of anticipation coursing through him. He lay down, staring at the ceiling, thoughts swirling in his mind. The dragon dream had returned, vivid and powerful, and he knew that he was on the brink of something monumental. As he drifted off to sleep, the familiar glow of burning eyes filled his vision, the dragon's wings unfurling against the night sky. He could feel the heat radiating from its massive body, the connection between them deepening with each passing moment. In that dream, the dragon spoke again, its voice resonating within him. You are more than you know, child of snow. Embrace your destiny, for it awaits you. Jon awoke with a start, heart racing, the weight of the dragon's words echoing in his mind. He knew that he was being called to something greater, a purpose that transcended his childhood fears. With the dawn approaching, Jon understood that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges and uncertainty, but he was ready to embrace it. He would answer the call of the dragon, whatever that may mean, and carve his own destiny in the flames of fate. As he lay in the dim light of morning, Jon felt a sense of clarity wash over him. He was no longer just a boy caught between worlds. He was a child of fire and ice, destined to forge his own path amidst the chaos of King's Landing. With newfound resolve, Jon rose from his bed, ready to face whatever challenges awaited him, determined to stand up for those who could not stand for themselves. The dragon had called to him, and he would answer.